Hello everyone. Today I'll be discussing about debugging Java application in IntelliJ. So I came up with this topic because this is a by default skill which every developer, rather backend developer, should know. And this skill is not talked about much, is because this is a by default skill which should be known, and an important one as well. So I'll give you an overview of what exactly this debugging is and how to be a good debugger. So debugging is a technique which helps us to take control of the execution of a program and understand the flow better. So basically, control of the execution. So if I run this Java application in a normal mode, then I don't have any control over this once I click on this run button, because it will flow through the code, and it will give the desired response. So if you want to control the execution of the program, we will we will have to first add a, say for example, I add a debug point over here and then run the application in the debug mode. So if you see, the execution stopped over here. So which means now I have full control over this. And if I want to manipulate or do whatever, if I want to terminate at this point, we can do everything. Like, this is the level of control which we get when we start an application in a debug mode. So right now I'll allow it to flow through. So I'll press F9 in my laptop, so it goes through and it prints everything. So let's go through the theory first. So what are the terms need to understand in debugging an application? One is the debug mode. So basically every application has two modes, one normal mode and second one, debug mode. So in normal mode, what happens is, like when we deploy a application in production or some staging environment, then we run that in normal mode. And when we develop any code, when we write a code and want to test that test any changes, in that case we run the application in debugging mode. Basically developers run the application in debug mode to have a better control on the what code changes they had done and to test it properly. Okay, so now going back to breakpoint and debug point, these two are same terms, referring to same thing. So this point, when I click here, it gets a point over here. So this point is basically called the debug point. And if I want to see how many debug points or what are the debug points which I have added, I can come up over here. It says view breakpoints. So breakpoints, debug points, all that are same. So this is the application and I have debug points at these two places. So here also you can see line number 8 and 9. It says line number 8 and 9. This 10 and 45 is something else. Just ignore that. So basically, so these are my debug points. If you want to remove the debug points, you can just simply click here and it will remove that debug breakpoints. So that is done. Now even if you want to skip the breakpoint, say for example, I have a breakpoint over here and I don't want to, like, I don't want to get into the breakpoint and stop the execution. So what I'll do is I'll skip the points and I'll start the application. So even at breakpoint, see, you can see this is grayed out. So even at debug mode, it flew and it didn't stop at the debug point. So this is the feature of mute debug points. So now let's go to execution. So execution is what I said, the blue line which stops at a particular line. So we have control over it. Then we come to stack trace running the code. Say for example, if I put a debug point, say in the first line of the a method which is invoked by the main method. So if I run this application now, so the execution is at this point. So if I want to see what happened, or like what are the call stack of this method, so if you see, first of all it went into the main method at line number 8. You can see at main method line number 8, and then at line number 8 we have a method call of fact. So now at line number 13 it is at fact method. You can see, so this is called this call stack. Okay, so if I click on here, so it says that from this point it came to this point. Okay, So this is the call stack which we call. So if I want to proceed from here, there are two ways. Either we can terminate this or we can allow it to flow. So like if I click on, so if I click on proceed, then it will proceed, resume the program. And if I want to terminate, I can click on this and it will terminate the session, execution rather. If I click on this, so the execution got terminated, and you can see only the first line is printed and the rest of the lines were not printed because it says disconnected from target VM. Okay. So now going to variables. So like say for example, I'll keep this debug point and run it again. So at this point, what are the class level variables, method level variables, whatever we have, that we can be that will be able to, that we are able to see it from here. So for example, this method is having a variable called number, so we can see this number is over here, which is having 5 as the current value. So now going to stack trace running code variables evaluation. So if I come to okay, so let's go to evaluation. So if I click on this evaluation and I want to know the value of number, so I can put the variable name, say for example number, and I can run it. So it says 5. So at this point, if I put the, say for example, if I want to know the value of this fact variable, okay, let me click on evaluate. So fact is not initialized yet, so let me go to one more debug point. Okay, let me proceed with one more next line, proceed to the next line. So at this point you can see I is initialized to 0 and fact is initialized to 1. So if I click here and then I run fact to know the value, it gives value 1. Okay, and one more feature of this is that we can change the value at runtime. So I want to set the value of fact to say 10. So if I put 10 over here and I hit on enter, the value is modified. So if so you can see fact is having a value at 10 at runtime. Okay, so this is evaluation, and the step into, step over, step out, these are some of the features. Say for example, this is step over, step into, force step into. Say for example, step over means like execution line by line, step into means going inside the method, and step force into is not used basic is not used regularly, so we can ignore this. And this is step out, like if you want to get out of the method execution, so what will happen is that it will get out of it. So for example, at this point we are into this fact method, so if I click on this, it gets out of the method and goes back to where it was started. So factorial of 5 is it's showing 1200 because we have changed the value of fact at runtime. So see, the value of fact is changed at runtime and that impacted the result which we got. So now if I click on F8, which is the line by line execution, so it goes to the next line and then the execution is completed. So this is a basic overview of debugging an application. So now let's go to some best practices. So if we have any error, exception, then get the stack trace from the application log. Say for example, here we can see an exception and it says incorrect double value 15th of October 12 p.m. and INV. So this is an MySQL detect truncation exception. So some of the columns, one of the columns is expecting a double value, but it is getting a string. So that should be checked. And how to check that? See, this is the stack trace. So like these many methods were called from this particular package. So this, you can see com.mysql.jdbc. This means that this is a library class, so we don't have any control over that. But then come down, you can see that this is a batch process dot abort billing run method, and this method is inside batch process service dot groovy 580. 580 is the line number, and this is the batch process service dot groovy is the file number. So if you copy this file number and go to this line number, you'll get to know that where exactly this variable is being this value is being set. And you can check, you can put a debug point rather at this point, and then you can check or change the value at runtime or exactly what happened to that. So this way you can track the stack trace. Changing value at runtime, I showed how exactly we can do that. And say for example, if we have some if and else conditions, value can be also evaluated using this evaluate expression tool. So this is a very powerful tool in figuring out what exact why, like figuring it out what could be the value of this at this given point. Then we can come to have only one yes, it is recommended that we should have only one required debug points. Don't like just add a necessary debug point whichever it is needed. Don't populate the application with this many, like all multiple debug points at all the places. So this is not a best practices of doing it. It will like confuse the developer. Use of evaluation, as I said, evaluation is a very useful tool, and it is used to find out the expression values at runtimes. Is it, say for example, we have a big if condition and we are not able to figure out what exactly the value would be, or we can hover on each variable and then check or inspect what value it is there, what is the value at that point. So instead of doing that, copy the entire condition and paste it in the evaluate expression field, and there you can figure out whether it is true or false. Got it. So these are some of the best practices which I think should every developer should know this, and I hope I was clear. If you have any doubts or something to ask, then you can ping me in the chat, comment in the you can comment, and then we can discuss that. Thank you.